installment of Justice for All. My name is Howard Dotson. My first installment was about the Syrian refugees and restorative justice for 4 years of Trump's Muslim ban. Tonight we're going to talk about reparations. In today's news, we saw that in California and San Francisco, they're looking at reparations for African Americans. Price tag sometimes can be shocking, but the U.S. president has yet to apologize for 300 years of slavery, for 100 years of Jim Crow, for the lasting institutional racism that has kept such disparities in income and health for African Americans. Several scholars have shared numbers about reparations and the impact that slavery had on African Americans and the 100 years of the Jim Crow South. One scholar estimates from 1620 to 1840, unpaid wages to slaves in today's dollars, 1.4 trillion. Another scholar estimates with the dollars today that the lost wages for slaves 3.5 trillion. Another estimates $5 to $10 trillion.
Wow.
We promised 40 acres and a mule. We saw the race riots in the 1920s. We saw African Americans being kicked off their land in Oklahoma. There's Black Wall Street. We saw them being attacked. Estimates are from 1626 to 1875. 14 million Africans kidnapped and shipped across the Atlantic. 10 million Africans were traded by air. 5.1 million African slaves to Brazil. One scholar wrote, if you don't deny what side of being an American citizen, why should you deny your liability? If you don't deny the asset, why should you deny the liability? Being an American citizen. Our original sin, Native Americans, and what we did to the African slaves. We paid reparations to the Native Americans. We paid reparations to the Japanese who were interned. But to date, there's still no reparation for the descendants of the African slaves. 2019, they did a poll. 73% of African Americans agreed the U.S. should make cash payments to African American descendants of slaves. Only 16% of white Americans agreed to that. 16%. So I see this disconnect of what I hear from the African American community. The reconciliation that still needs to be done. The UN actually declared a national day to remember the descendants. That day is March 25th.
Yeah.
I don't see that in the news. We have Juneteenth. We have MLK Day. We have Black History Month. Why do we never hear about March 25th, the day declared by the UN? There's actually talk of reparations for the African countries who had 14 million of their citizens kidnapped, brought here. Here's some stats about the healthcare reality. There's a healthcare disparities for African Americans in the country. Black mothers are 3 times more likely to die from their pregnancy than white. Black infants are 2 times more likely to die within their first year. Premature deaths, 30 times more likely. One of the interesting studies looked at the history of redlining and the impact of redlining and the correlation of gun violence. The first study was in Philadelphia, where Black males are 15 times more likely to die from gun violence. That correlation of the redlining, that goes back to the 1930s. There was a New Deal loan program where they decided, here's different grades of where we should do home loans. Red was where the racial ethnic minorities lived. That's why it's called the red line. And the disinvestment that happened where African Americans were not able to own homes and build that equity and pass down that income as inheritance to their children, grandchildren. You do those numbers and you realize, in addition to slavery and Jim Crow, that redlining that happened from the 1930s and we're still dealing with the segregated cities where there's not equitable investment. You see the structural racism that's still in place. There's calls for a truth commission. Just like we had in South Africa, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where all parties come together to acknowledge and atone for our original sin. So in addition to reparations and money that should come from all those banks, all those businesses that profited off of redlining, the proposal that some make is that the U.S. sells bonds to finance the reparation to descendants of African Americans kidnapped, beaten, thrown overboard, hung from trees. We still haven't atoned. We still haven't made amends for what we did to God's precious children. So as a presidential candidate, I'm calling for reparations. If I am president, I will apologize and I will advocate legislation to have bonds that are sold for us to finally deliver on the 40 acres and a mule that was promised. Restorative justice for the redlining impact that it's had on so many generations of African Americans. I talked with Gary Hines from Sounds of Blackness, and I want to share a song that Sounds of Blackness sings, Time for Reparations.
It's time. It's time. It's time. I know it's time. The generation for reparation. Pay up, time to pay up. Reparation.
African American. Leading cause of death for young black males, gun violence. And that gun violence is happening in areas that were once redlined. There's public health disparities that have a direct correlation with the poverty that has passed down from generation to generation because of the injustices that were done to African Americans. I have on the line with me my friend Emma, who I met at the African American History Museum. And I invite you just to respond to the video or to your experience going through that museum together.
You are not going to put me on the spot, are you?
No, I just wanted to give you the floor. If it gives you words, I want you to feel free to share.
Okay.
When I was 5 years old, I was on a road trip down to Florida to see my dad and his family. And I was poisoned by my uncle.
Hmm.
He taught me the N word. I didn't know what the word was. Where I lived, I didn't see many African Americans. So when I saw this African American at a road stop gas station, I called him the N word. I was innocent, but I was poisoned. And the hurt and anger in that man's eyes is seared on my soul. I've been in this struggle ever since. When I hear people sharing that hate, I know where I stand as an ally. Maple Grove, where I grew up, some of the first African Americans in our community were the kids I went to school with. The Cushionberry, the Jackson, the Patrick. I saw what it was like for them being pioneers in our community. One day they spray painted the KKK on the driveway. We all came together. We stood in front of the house where we believed that was the person who did that, to show solidarity. So being an ally is more than MLK Day or Juneteenth or Black History. Being an ally means advocating for restorative justice for our original sin. And the legacy is bridging those health disparities, bridging the achievement gaps and the education inequalities, confronting the crimes associated with poverty, so many African Americans walking around with untreated PTSD for violence. So many African Americans struggling with addiction because they don't have access to mental health care. If Serena Williams has trouble with health care disparities, imagine what it's like for the average African American woman. Complicated history of how our healthcare system deliberately let African Americans have syphilis in the Tuskegee study. How African American women were given forced hysterectomies without consent. How gynecology was developed by procedures done on African American women without painkillers. So I can understand why African Americans are reluctant to engage our healthcare system. But the diabetes, the hypertension, so many healthcare disparities that show the lasting impact of our original sin that to atone for it. As a chaplain, my heart breaks to see the healthcare realities in America. Because every African American is a precious child of God. Benjamin Franklin said it best: your best wealth is health. How many African Americans struggle to get access to their best wealth? So many people recommend that with the reparations that it go towards healthcare infrastructure and reducing the healthcare costs so that African Americans can experience health and some restorative justice. That's why I'm calling for reparations. Calling for our U.S. president to apologize and for us to have a truth commission. That's the only way we're going to heal from the violence and the trauma that we see every day in the news. We need to come to terms with our original sin. Do you have any closing words, Emma?
No, I didn't quite prepare myself for this.
I just wanted you to have a chance.
Oh, next time I'll be prepared. I promise.
I'm honored that I walked through that museum with you,
Yes, same here.
and I look forward to seeing you in Baltimore when I go to DC for meeting.
Please do. It'll be a pleasure. Please don't forget me.
Oh, I'll never forget you. God bless and keep you.
Same to you.
We'll keep in touch.
Okay, did you save this?
Yep, I'm saving it. I'll
Okay, can you send that to me?
Glad to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.